Hi, everybody. Welcome back for week 3 of meal prep. I hope you've been enjoying the recipes that we cooked in week 1 and week 2. So before we jump right in, I just want to remind you of our strategy whenever we are prepping meals. So keep in mind our strategy that we follow when we're doing our meal prep, and you can scale this to the number of people in your household. So each week we want to make a cooked grain dish. So a grain would be brown rice, quinoa, grits, steel-cut oatmeal, something like that, barley, oats, all that, rye. And then a cooked green vegetable, a cooked vegetable that's not a green, a raw green, or a salad, commonly. And then a main dish, something you have a lot of that you can just eat from to kind of fill in the gaps. A breakfast, and then a bean dish. So that way we make sure that we're getting plenty of fiber and plenty of phytonutrients when we have it broken out like this, and this will set us up for success for the week. So I'm just going to jump right in. The first dish that I'm going to make is our cooked grain, and so that's going to be our grits. So I use yellow corn grits, commonly referred to as polenta, and I'm going to just go ahead and put this in my 3-quart pan. So I have 2 cups of dried yellow corn grits here. And then I need to add, I generally will do a 3-to-1 ratio on water to grits because I like mine creamy. I don't like them dry or crunchy, and I don't know anybody else that does either. So I'll do 3-to-1 ratio here. And then, so you can just leave it with the water. Or if you want to add a little bit of flavor, I have these vegan not chicken bouillon cubes. So this will give it a little bit of flavor in my grits. Now I'm going to turn this on, cover it, bring it to a boil, and I'll be whisking it occasionally. So you'll see me step over and pay attention to it a little bit. And then I'll turn it down to low and cook them for about 20 minutes or so. So really easy, and there's a lot of variations and things that you can do with cooked grits throughout the week, and I'll share some of those with you in a little bit. So I'm just going to whisk my grits like this. Let's put it on the screen. Bring that to a boil, and then I'll cover it and come back to it. Okay, so next I want to work on our main dish. The main dish in the week 3 meal plan is actually a vegetable lasagna. I'm going to use a plug-in electric skillet, but you can use just a regular casserole dish and bake this in your oven if you don't have an electric skillet. At this point, you would want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees. All right, so if you're using an electric skillet or a casserole dish, either way, we'll get started. I'm going to add, so you can home make your spaghetti sauce. I'm going to add mine from a jar for convenience today. I like to find a low-fat, low-sodium option. Kind of spread this around. And then this is something that I started doing recently, actually. I want to add a little bit of sweet potato at the bottom. But when I do that, I need to cut it really small so that it'll cook quickly because sweet potatoes are quite firm. And I'm using the skin on the sweet potato because remember all those nutrients, they're so close to the skin in the root veggies, and we'll get that extra fiber. So that's pretty good. I used 1 small sweet potato. Okay, so I'm done cutting our sweet potato, and this is almost like a slaw cut, if you will. It's very thin, so it will cook as quickly as the rest of the vegetables. Next, I'm going to add 2 squashes. I'm going to add a yellow squash and a zucchini squash. And I just kind of julienne cut these kind of like hash browns, I guess is what they resemble, and spread them around in the pan. This veggie lasagna is one of our go-to recipes for the family because it's so easy to put together and it's so nutritious, and it's honestly one of the dishes that I don't have to fight with the kids to get them to eat it. So we just spread these around. Okay, ignore the mess I'm making. All right, next, so we need a couple of noodles. So for my electric skillet, I don't have to pre-cook the noodles. If you need to, then you would need to boil some. So I'm going to just place these in the skillet like this. And if you don't want to use noodles, because they don't have to be wheat noodles, gluten-free noodles work great in this dish. But if you don't want noodles at all, you could thin slice eggplant, and that makes a great separation of the different layers. It just gets a little bit moist from all the vegetables in the eggplant. So keep that in mind, that you might have some extra moisture in there. And I'll just kind of spread this around. My grits are boiling, so I'm going to step over here, stir those a little bit. They always tend to stick, so I like to come back to them and whisk them. So for this step, I'm just going to turn it down to low and let those cook for about 20 minutes or so. There we go. All right, back to our lasagna. Looks like I need just a little bit more sauce to cover the noodles. Next, I'm going to add some more beta-carotene rich foods. I'm going to add some carrot. And I do, again, because it's a hard veggie like the sweet potato, so I cut the carrot real small here. Leave the skin on your carrot. Just wash it gently, but don't scrub that skin off or cut it. Next, I like to have some green in here, so I always add spinach, and just a giant handful will be fine. You can spread that around. Spinach is tender enough that it works great in a lasagna. I wouldn't typically use a firmer green like cabbage or kale or anything like that. Right? And now I want to slice some mushrooms. Now, most of my family eats mushrooms, so I'll slice them like this, just nice. You can really, I like to know when I'm eating mushrooms, but my husband doesn't like mushrooms. So when I'm cooking for him, I cut them really, really small into a julienne shape, or you could even like pulse them in a food processor to kind of get it more of like a meaty texture, like almost a ground sort of thing. That's good. If the mushrooms are fresh and firm, that'll work really great. And then you could spread it. So then they don't know there's mushrooms in there, but I don't think he'll be eating this batch. So I'm just going to go ahead and slice them. And they're just so beautiful when they come out thin sliced like that. I like to have them in the lasagna that way. And these are white button mushrooms, but you can use baby bellas too, just whatever you have on hand. If you're a big fan of mushrooms, you could use the wild mushrooms in here too. They actually have more vitamin D than the other varieties usually. Okay, so now I have our mushrooms. I'm just squishing it down because I'm going to add a few more of the noodles here. So this is where you would add your eggplant layer if you're doing that. Now I'm just going to add the rest of my sauce. So I use a 40 ounces of sauce when I make my lasagna. I don't like dry noodles or anything like that. So I'm going to just spread this around, and you have some options on the top. Sometimes when I have cauliflower handy, I'll just rice that and shred it like in a hash brown cut. And so it actually looks like shredded cheese on top. That is really beautiful. But today, instead, I want to suggest beans to you. So I use cannellinis. Navy beans would be fine too. I mean, they all pretty much have the same taste and texture, but I really like adding them to this dish. One, because I'm feeding a lot of people and I want this lasagna to be very filling. And so just having the beans in there gives us more protein and fiber, which will help us fill up faster. But I also really like the texture of the beans in a lasagna, and I never thought I would, but it kind of gives it a buttery texture, which is nice. So we'll just add those. So if you're using canned beans, be sure you rinse them and drain them. All right. Ours are from frozen, so we just had to thaw them. It just comes in really handy when you cook your beans ahead of time and freeze them whenever you want to do meal prep. All right, so that's it. So I'm going to plug this in and cook it over medium. It'll be done in about 30 minutes. If you're using the oven, again, we preheated the oven at 350 degrees. And then you want to bake it covered for about 30 to 45 minutes, and then take the cover off and bake it for another 30 minutes. And then you'll have a really delicious lasagna that is full of nutrients and protein and fiber, and will help sustain you full of energy throughout the week. Okay, so we are done with the lasagna. Let me plug this in, and we'll get started on our next dish. So the next meal that we're making in meal prep week 3 is our breakfast dish. So I want to show you how to make a delicious apple cinnamon oatmeal that you can reheat throughout the week. It's really good, and it gives it kind of a nice sweet flavor. And sometimes I get in a rut with my oatmeal, and I'm so used to doing bananas and pecans and just get kind of bored with it. And so this is a really nice variation that I enjoy, and so do the kids. So we always use steel cut oats at home. That's what I recommend. It's more whole than the traditional oats, but if you don't like this texture, then by all means use the traditional oats. So I'm adding 2 cups of dried steel cut oats here, and then 4 cups of water. And I want to tell you, if your steel cut oats, if you feel like they take too long for you to cook, then you can put them in the water overnight and let them sit in the fridge before you cook them. Also, steel cut oats, you can often find them in quick cooking as well. So they'll cook in about 10 minutes instead of 30. So I've added 4 cups of water here, and then 2 cups of oatmeal. Next, I want to add some fruit. So I've got 2 fresh red apples, and I'm just going to cut them into a hash brown cut. I don't want it to be tiny and mushy, and so this is just a nice kind of middle size. I don't want big giant slices. If you can imagine the texture of the apples in this, it's going to be basically like applesauce. Strawberries are also fantastic in here. This would be a great time to stir in some sliced strawberries as well. It just makes it a little sweeter, which I like. So we've got our apples. And then I need 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. There we go. I'm going to stir it just so that it's mixed, and then cook it however I would regularly cook steel cut oats. So these are regular, they're not quick cooking. So I'm going to cover it and bring it to a boil on the stove, and then reduce the heat to low, and they'll be done in about 25 to 30 minutes. Now I'm cooking them. In this meal prep scenario, I would be cooking them on Sunday, and we're kind of eating them throughout the week. So whenever I reheat them, I usually just stir in a little bit of plant-based milk to replenish some of that moisture, and so they're not so thick. Side note, the more you stir oats, the gummier they get. I like them gummy. So before my cooking process ends, I kind of stir a lot. I mean, the great thing about oats is that they have soluble fiber. It's that gummy fiber. That's the specific kind of fiber that removes excess cholesterol. So that's why they're gummy, but I like them gummy. So I always stir them pretty well so they get kind of creamy and all that. And I like that a lot. So that's our breakfast. That's easy peasy for this week. So next for our cooked greens, it's just that, cooked greens. So we're going to have collard greens and turnip greens mixed together. Greens can cook down a lot. So I just have a whole lot of them. But since they start out big, I'm using a big 7-quart. You could even use a 10-quart. If you feel like that would be better. So whenever I make greens, I like to pre-cook my carrots and my onions so they can kind of, not just get soft on the stovetop, but I actually like them to caramelize some. And what I mean by caramelize is when you cook them slow on medium-low heat, the vegetable, specifically the onions, will release this nice sugar, and that makes that brown on the pan. And so I really like to caramelize these before I add the greens. And so I'll walk you through that when we get there. For now, I'm just going to hash brown cut like a julienne the carrots. And I'm using 2 large carrots for 1 7-quart of greens. And now I'm cutting in 1 yellow onion. You can use a white onion, a red onion. I've used it all in here. It all caramelizes just fine and tastes delicious. So I'm going to do that same small cut on the onion. Oh, that's great. All right. Let me move my oatmeal over to one eye, and then I'll do my caramelizing right here so you can see it in the corner of your screen. The oatmeal already smells delicious. Oh, look at, I just want to show it to you. Look, it's starting to foam up with the cinnamon and the apples. Oh, it smells good. If you wanted, you could add like some nutmeg. That would be great. Ground nutmeg in there, and maybe a pinch of ground ginger. So for caramelizing my onions and peppers, I have them on medium-low. You can speed up the process if you want to cook it on a higher temperature with the lid. So for your cookware, if your vegetables are going to stick to the pan without oil, I recommend instead of oil, use a little bit of water or broth. And I'm going to walk you through, like, as it caramelizes and browns, how you can get that syrup off and back on the veggies. So in summary, medium-low, a long, slow cooking process to caramelize those. And we'll just revisit it every 5 or 10 minutes, kick it around, and once it's nice and caramelized, I'm going to add my greens. So the greens I've cut into smaller, more bite-sized pieces. Let me turn this down. The oatmeal is ready to turn down to low. So the greens I've cut into bite-sized pieces, so make sure you do that. I really do use collards a whole lot. I mean, they're so easy to de-stem and slice, and it's such a hearty green. I feel like it lasts longer in my refrigerator in case I don't make it this week. If I save it for next week, then it'll be good, usually. And so this is very easy. So one thing about this is when I add the greens to our carrots and onions, you have to make a decision. So do you want regular greens, which I would just put a small amount of water in there to kind of help vapor cook, barely steam the greens? Or do you want pot liquor? Now, I grew up in Louisiana, and so I'm used to having pot liquor greens. That means a whole lot of veggie juice and stuff at the bottom of your greens. And greens in Louisiana are typically served in a bowl because they've got so much juice and pot liquor with them. And so, as the name implies, if I took everything out, there's a whole bunch of delicious sauce in the bottom, and that's the pot liquor. You get the idea. So you'll have to decide. If you want to make them pot liquor, then we'll add about 1.5 to 2 cups of vegetable broth, or you could use the not chicken bouillon. It's got some sodium in it though. So either way, we'll put that, and that's what we'll cook our greens in, so that broth will have that delicious flavor. Okay, so I'll come back to the greens. So for your lasagna, if you're using an electric skillet, now this is just letting me know it's up to temperature. So now I'm going to turn it down to low, and it'll finish the cooking process there. Next up on our meal prep is cooked veggies. So this week's cooked veggies is going to be cooked squash with corn and tomatoes. So I'm going to take a cold pan. I'll just cut directly into it. The nice thing about this recipe is you just kind of dump everything in and let it simmer. So it's very, very simple to make, which is why I like making big batches of it. It's also goes great with the grits if you want to do that, or you can serve it with quinoa or brown rice. And this one does have a good sauce at the bottom too, and I like that when I'm having my grains. So I've got 1 yellow onion, and I'm going to slice this rather than hash brown really small. I kind of like those bigger slices. Any kind of onion will work in here. I just really prefer the yellow onions. I feel like they're a little sweeter than the white, and definitely more than the red. They're more flavorful. Okay, so I've got my onion in here. Next, I'm going to add some squash and zucchini again, just like in our lasagna. And I like to waffle cut it, so I kind of get like a sort of thick piece. There we go. So easy, right? Okay. And then this recipe, if you want to add a little heat, you can. I'm going to add, so you could use a jalapeno if you want. I'm going to use a poblano pepper instead, not quite as spicy and a little more flavor. So I'm just going to mince this, maybe about 1 tablespoon or so. And I don't want to get that on my hands, so I'm going to stick my spoon in there for that. Okay. To finish this up, I'm going to add about a teaspoon of dried thyme, which is stuck to my bowl. 1.5 cups of diced tomatoes. If you're using a can, then I do use the sauce with it. And about 1 cup of fresh corn. I do like to add fresh ground pepper to this dish, so I'll probably add about 1/4 teaspoon. Next step, I'm going to put this on the stove top and cover it and cook it on medium heat for just about 5 minutes. And then I want to toss it and just check the tenderness of that squash and zucchini. I don't like those. I prefer they not be mushy. So that's what I'm checking for. I just want to keep them a little bit to retain their shape. I'm going to check back in on my veggies. Oh, this is a perfect teaching example. So my veggies here, I abandoned them while I was making the other dishes. And I want to show you this brown that I've got in the bottom of the pan. I think you can see it there. Okay, so all I'm going to do is add a little bit of water directly onto that part. Mix my veggies in with it, and then it'll just pick that up. There we go. So they actually have this nice brown tint, and I'm going to let these, well, they're pretty soft actually, because I had the heat up a little bit too high. So I think this is a good point. Since I'm happy with their softness there, I'm going to go ahead and add the greens. So I'm just going to pile these and squish them down. I want to make pot liquor today. So I'm going to add about 2 cups of water or broth. You could use water and then add some of the bouillon cubes if you want to. But all of these greens are going to fit in here. Can you believe it? Found a big piece of stem that I missed. I'm not a big fan of the stem, so I don't usually put those in here. So here's our big 7-quart pot of greens. This is a mix of turnips and collards. If you just have collards or you just have turnips, that'll work fine too. I've done this with kale and collards together, and that's a really nice combination as well. If you like that pepperiness of the mustard greens, then mustards are great to add here, and then you kind of have the trio going on. So I do want to make these pot liquor. So I'm going to add about 2 cups. So I just have some pre-made broth that I keep in the fridge. So I'm going to add about 2 cups so that ours can get nice and juicy. All right. So now I want to cover this, and I've got to get that liquid hot. So you need to bring it to a low boil as best you can tell. Sometimes that's best just listening. And then once that liquid is nice and hot, I'll turn it down to low and just let it simmer for about 20 to 30 minutes until those greens are as tender as you like. Okay. The next recipe is very, very simple, but honestly, when you're in quick need of a bean dish, this one is perfect. It has a lot of flavor. It goes really nicely with the grits and the greens as a meal. And so it's just pintos with chilies. And so I've got my pre-cooked pintos, and I'm going to add these just to a little 2-quart saucepan. Let me grab some handles. You see that? Okay. And these are just minced green chilies. So I've got about a 1/4 cup there. I'm just going to stir these and simmer this on low for a few minutes until it's warmed through. And then you get a little bit of syrup from those green chilies. So really easy, really simple, but honestly, it's a great go-to dish when you need some kind of bean with flavor. So I'm covering it. I'll just simmer it on low for a few minutes. I was just checking in on the squash and tomatoes and corn, and it's ready. It smells delicious too. But check this out. All these bright, colorful flavors, and we've got a nice little sauce at the bottom. So that is going to go great with grits or with quinoa or brown rice. And I mentioned that I like my squash still somewhat firm, not too soggy. So this took about 6 or 7 minutes on the stovetop. That's it. And it's ready to go to my liking. I also like to have a little bit of firmness in the onions in these to go with the squashes. So I'm going to just cover this and set it aside. Now let's check in on our grits and see how they're doing. Oh yeah, these are nice and soft, but they always end up a little drier than I prefer. So before I serve them, while they're hot, I like to stir in some type of unsweetened plant milk. If you just do the regular plant milk, then they're going to have an odd sweet flavor, which is unusual for grits and unfamiliar. So I stir in anywhere from a 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup. I like creamy grits, so that's why I'm doing it. Also, this is a great time if you want to add nutritional yeast to give it that cheesy flavor. Don't add too much so it gets bitter. I would recommend about a 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast at the most, and then that'll give it kind of that cheesy, creamy grit flavor. Another variation that you can do at this point is add some minced green chilies. So you could have cheesy chili grits also. That would be really good. But since we've already got chilies in our pintos, and I intend to have grits with the pintos, I'm just going to leave them with this extra bit of moisture in there. So grits, when they cool, they will get firm. So I'm going to just leave these in the stove on warm until I'm ready to deal with them. So you can keep them on the stove warming if you're going to eat them right away, but since we're doing meal prep, I like to use just a round cake pan or a casserole dish of some sort and go ahead and put them in here so that they can set. Once they cool, they'll set. And they'll be firm enough actually to slice. And so you can have a slice of grits with your meal. And that is the perfect size. This is actually an 8-inch cake pan, an 8-inch round. So that's going to be perfect for our grits to just cover and put in the refrigerator until we're ready to eat them. I'm going to set my grits aside and let's check in on our oatmeal. So this looks done. Our apples have a really nice texture but sweet aroma. I can smell that cinnamon. So this looks great. So I mentioned that you could add nutmeg as a variation, but also you could add walnuts. That would give you some nice omega-3s. This is ready to go. And I mentioned I stir mine a lot to kind of get them a little creamier, and that's totally up to you. But these are going to reheat great throughout the week. I'll give you a closer look. Yeah, delicious. So let's move on to our last recipe, and that's our Brussels sprout salad. So you'll need a large bowl for this, because Brussels sprouts, they tend to grow on you, I feel like, as you slice them. The reason that I like to make this salad is because a lot of people don't like big Brussels, like when they're just served whole or cut in half. They're kind of put off by that texture sometimes. I love them personally, but so this salad is actually really popular because we shave the Brussels sprouts really thin. So let's make the salad first, and then I'll work on the dressing, which is just simple, done with a whisk. So first I'm going to start with my whole Brussels. We did cut the ends off, so they're trimmed, which is nice. These are nice and fresh. I would only recommend fresh Brussels sprouts in a salad. Frozen Brussels are not so good and mushy. And when I say slice thin, I mean like wafer thin. And this recipe calls for about 3 dozen Brussels sprouts. All right, now that our Brussels sprouts are nice and shaved, see how much 3 dozen turned into a whole lot of salad there. Now I'm going to slice in, actually I'm going to cut it pretty small because it's pretty sharp flavor. I'm going to take half of a red onion and cut this pretty small. So that's going to give it, woo, some spice, right? A little bit spicy from the onion. Next, I need 3 scallions, and I just went ahead and sliced those ahead of time. I use both the white and green parts, so I'll distribute those. And about a tablespoon of fresh basil that I've sliced real thin, but honestly, if you use more, I think the more the better in this salad. I really like the little basil surprise that you get. Next, we'll add some sweetness. So I'm going to add a large apple. So you can use a green apple or a red apple. So I'll use the red because I think green would be a little tart for my taste in this. There we go. This will kind of tone down some of that. And then I've got half a cup of dried cranberries. I like to separate them. A good substitution for the cranberries would just be dried cherries. And I try to find the ones that don't have any added sugar at all. Additionally, this is optional. You could add half a teaspoon of red pepper flakes, and that would really add some spice to it as well. All right, for the dressing, I'm going to put them together, put it together in this bowl. So it starts out with the juice of 1 or 2 lemons. And this looks like it's going to be a really juicy lemon. This original recipe actually calls for 1/4 cup of olive oil, and that is just a lot of fat. And so instead of olive oil, I'm going to add a little bit of water to kind of thin out the sour from the lemon and make it go a little bit further. But you could use apple juice instead if you'd rather have that sweet flavor. Okay, so we've got our lemon juice, and then I need 1 tablespoon of Dijon mustard. I love the Dijon mustard in here, so don't sub that out. And a teaspoon of maple syrup, or you could use agave if you prefer. About 1/2 teaspoon of ground black pepper. That's good. And then 2 tablespoons of hazelnuts. And I'm actually going to whisk this real well before I put those hazelnuts in. If you don't want the crunch from the hazelnuts, you could throw this all in a blender, but I feel like why mess up a blender? This will be great. Oh, this looks delicious. Okay. So next, I'm just pouring this over the salad. I didn't add the water to the dressing because I want to try this first, how it spreads out on the salad with that lemon. Yep. That's perfect. I like that lemony tang. And if it's too strong for you, you could add just a little bit. I would probably start with 1 or 2 tablespoons to start with of apple juice or water to thin it out. But it doesn't need the oil, and we don't need the oil in our bodies anyway. So great, really refreshing, crisp Brussels sprout salad. I hope you guys enjoy this. I'm going to set it aside, and we're going to revisit our greens to see how they're coming along. So these greens look great. Oh, we've got nice sauce at the bottom. And this is about the texture that I like in our greens. Whew, I'm getting a lot of steam in my face. If you really like webby greens, then you can cook them for a long time, about an hour, and that the firmness of the leaf will really break down. I prefer them just a little bit firm. I think that's nice to still know that I'm eating a green, and the carrots and onions are going to give this a really nice sweetness. For some variations, you could definitely add raw garlic when you're cooking. For this much green, I would probably add 4 or 5 cloves, and that would be really nice to have some garlicky greens with them. Okay, this is good. I think everything else is ready. Let's check. This is our pintos and chilies. And we do have a little bit of sauce at the bottom that's come from the chilies. Oh, and this smells really good. And lastly, our lasagna is ready. This is perfect timing. It looks nice. Always, before you take it out of the oven, or if you're using the skillet before you turn it off, just poke those noodles and make sure they're as tender as you like. So this is delicious. This is going to be filled with lots of good veggies. What I love about this veggie lasagna is low fat. You know, we're not using any cheese or dairy products, any animal products at all. And so that's going to make this lower in fat and cholesterol free, which is fantastic. So this is one of our family's go-to meals. All right, so meal prep week 3 is done. We've got delicious collards and turnip greens, fresh grits, yellow corn polenta, oatmeal with apples and cinnamon. Then we've got a great sauteed squash and onion dish here with tomatoes and corn. Some pintos with chilies, a little bit of spice, a delicious, light, refreshing Brussels sprout salad with a lemon hazelnut dressing, And then a really hearty and filling vegetable lasagna. I hope that you'll join us for week 4 of the meal prep, and I hope that you and your family enjoy these recipes. People always ask me, Katherine, what is that thing you're using to cut everything with? I literally cut everything with this. This is my Salad Master food processor, and I travel with it. I love it so much. If we're going out of town, I bring the food processor with me because I love to use it, but also it gets my kids involved in the cooking. This is not something we sell, but it is something you can earn for free. So I want to share that program with you in just a minute. The food processor, it comes with 5 cones, and they all cut a variety of different ways, but pretty much any fruit or vegetable, even tomatoes, bell peppers, all that. I do walnuts and pecans in mine. So anything you want, you can cut on the Salad Master machine. These are dishwasher safe, also come with a lifetime warranty. Now, if you're not familiar with Salad Master, it's a line of healthy cookware, and it's actually the only cookware that I trust to cook food for my family. So if we're traveling somewhere and they don't have Salad Master cookware, we bring our own pan with us because this is what I'm most comfortable eating food from for our family. I believe it is the highest quality, most advanced and cleanest cooking system on the market. Salad Master is backed by a limited lifetime warranty, proven performance, and actual nutrition studies that show that food cooked in Salad Master retains many more nutrients than food cooked in traditional methods. Salad Master is not sold in stores. We do in-home cooking demonstrations. I hope you'll sign up for a dinner demonstration so I can cook for you. If you're in the state of Texas, I'll come to your home, or you're welcome to come to our office in Southlake. And if you're outside of that area, then we can do a virtual demonstration through Zoom or another app of your choice. It's fun, it's informative. You know, in our nutrition classes, we talk about nutrients, about vitamins and minerals that you need. But on the Salad Master dinner demonstration, the reason it's so important is because I'm going to teach you about enemies to nutrition. Things that you might be doing, things that I did before I knew better that were actually killing these precious nutrients, either cooking them too hot of heat or doing things to dissolve the nutrients out, things that are working against our health and healing. And so that's what we talk about on the dinner demonstration. I also show you how to cook really fast, which is nice, but I think the most important part of the demonstration is the cookware test. And that's where we test the different types of cooking surfaces. And I will teach you how to do that so that you can actually taste if there's any chemical reaction coming from your pans when you heat them. You can taste that because your food is only as healthy as the surface that it's cooked in. And so this is what we talk about on the dinner demonstration. It's completely free, and you can sign up for the dinner demo on foodsaveme.com. I hope I get the opportunity to take this a step further with you so that you can learn about cooking surface, cooking techniques to protect all of these great nutrients. And I want to help you get that Salad Master food processor for free. This is easy. You just see the demonstration, provide a couple of referrals for your friends to see it, and then you can get this machine for free. It makes my life so much easier. And I think that's the biggest complaint from students when they're trying to transition to a whole food plant-based diet. It's just a lot of chopping and a lot of prep work. So anytime you can get a tool, especially a free one, then that's a great thing to just make your journey easier. So check it out. You can sign up on foodsavedme.com.